The first shock often comes quietly. Life in Canada does not announce itself with obvious hardship or dramatic extremes. Instead, it unfolds with a subdued rhythm that feels deceptively gentle. For many Americans, accustomed to sharper contrasts and louder signals of ambition, this calm can feel disorienting. The streets seem orderly to the point of restraint. Conversations lower their volume instinctively. Even conflict appears softened, wrapped in politeness and procedural distance. Nothing is overtly wrong, yet something feels unfamiliar beneath the surface. Early impressions tend to focus on this atmosphere of restraint. Public spaces feel composed, almost curated, as if emotion has been carefully edited out of daily life. Service interactions are polite but rarely warm. Small talk exists, but it rarely ventures into personal territory. The emotional temperature remains steady, never rising to high, never dropping to low. For Americans used to expressive openness or visible enthusiasm, this emotional neutrality can register as coldness or detachment. Even when no hostility is present. As days turn into weeks, deeper differences begin to emerge. Canadian culture places a strong emphasis on social balance and collective comfort. Standing out too strongly, whether through success, opinion, or personality, is often discouraged, not through confrontation, but through subtle social cues. The unspoken expectation is moderation. Confidence is acceptable, but self-promotion is not. Assertiveness is tolerated, but only when softened by humility. For Americans raised in an environment that often rewards visibility and boldness, this constant self-regulation can feel constraining. Daily habits reinforce this difference. Rules are followed not out of fear, but out of consensus. Lines are respected. Schedules are adhered to. Systems function quietly in the background, and questioning them too openly can feel socially awkward. There is comfort in predictability, but also a lack of emotional release. Many Americans notice that frustrations are rarely voiced directly. Instead, they are absorbed, redirected, or quietly endured. Over time, this creates an emotional landscape that feels flat. Even when life is objectively stable, workplace culture reflects the same values. Meetings tend to be measured and cautious. Direct confrontation is avoided. Feedback is delivered gently, sometimes so indirectly that its meaning becomes blurred. Ambition exists, but it is expressed carefully, almost apologetically. For Americans used to clear hierarchies, competitive drive, and direct negotiation, this can create confusion and internal tension. Progress feels slower, not because opportunities are absent, but because the cultural pace discourages urgency. In social settings, the same pattern continues. Friendships develop gradually and often remain compartmentalized. Invitations are polite but infrequent. Emotional intimacy builds slowly, if at all. Many Americans find themselves surrounded by people yet still feeling oddly distant, as if an invisible barrier separates surface interaction from deeper connection. This sense of quiet isolation does not arrive suddenly. It accumulates, day by day, through small moments that never quite open fully. This distance is rarely intentional, yet it is deeply embedded in social behavior. Canadians tend to protect personal boundaries carefully, valuing emotional privacy as a form of respect. Asking too many questions or expressing strong opinions too early can be perceived as intrusive rather than friendly. As a result, conversations often remain safe, neutral, and contained. For Americans, whose social norms often encourage openness as a sign of trust, this restraint can feel like rejection. Even when none is meant, the pace of life further amplifies this tension. Canada moves deliberately. Decisions take time. Processes involve consultation, compromise, and procedural patience. In many everyday situations, renting an apartment, navigating healthcare, dealing with bureaucracy, progress feels slow and methodical. There is reassurance in this stability, but also a sense of emotional inertia. Americans accustomed to faster feedback loops and immediate problem-solving often feel stalled, as if life is happening just slightly out of reach. Even leisure carries a different emotional tone. Entertainment tends to be understated. Celebrations are controlled. Public enthusiasm is muted. There is less visible indulgence, less dramatic release. Weekends feel restorative rather than energizing. For some Americans, this balance initially feels healthy, even refreshing. Over time, however, the absence of intensity can begin to feel like a loss rather than a relief. The highs are lower, The lows are softer, and the middle stretches on quietly. Weather plays a subtle but powerful role in shaping this experience. Long winters reinforce indoor living and emotional self-containment. Social plans become conditional, flexible, often postponed. Silence becomes normal. Stillness becomes familiar. While Canadians adapt to this rhythm with practiced ease, many Americans find the combination of climate and cultural restraint emotionally heavy. The environment encourages introspection, but offers fewer outlets for expressive release. What surprises many Americans most is that none of this feels overtly negative. Life in Canada is safe, functional, and predictably comfortable. Systems work. Conflict is minimized. Public trust remains relatively high. Yet comfort without emotional contrast can feel strangely draining. Without clear moments of triumph or struggle, days blend together. The sense of personal momentum weakens, replaced by a quiet steadiness that does not energize everyone equally. Over time, this steady environment begins to shape behavior. Americans often notice themselves speaking more softly, hesitating longer before expressing opinions, and moderating emotional responses. Adaptation happens gradually, sometimes unconsciously. For some, this adjustment brings calm and balance. For others, it creates an internal tension, a feeling of being emotionally compressed, carefully managed, but not fully expressed. The challenge is not survival or success, but emotional alignment. This is often the point where many Americans begin to question their compatibility with Canadian life. The issue is not opportunity, safety, or quality of living. It is the subtle mismatch between an internally expressive mindset and an externally restrained culture. What initially appears peaceful can begin to feel confining, not because of restriction, but because of constant emotional moderation. This realization rarely arrives as a dramatic breaking point. It emerges quietly through accumulated moments of emotional friction. Many Americans find themselves missing intensity more than convenience, missing directness more than comfort. The absence of visible conflict begins to feel less like harmony and more like emotional distance. Without clear outlets for frustration, excitement, or ambition, internal pressure builds slowly, often without obvious cause. Canadian society, shaped by compromise and restraint, offers a form of emotional safety that works exceptionally well for those aligned with its values. Stability is prioritized over spectacle. Politeness replaces confrontation. Collective ease outweighs individual expression. For Americans accustomed to clear emotional signals and more overt validation, this can feel like living in a permanent emotional neutral gear. Nothing is wrong, yet nothing fully resonates. Over time, this environment subtly reshapes expectations. Goals are recalibrated. Reactions are softened. Emotional edges are filed down. Many Americans notice that enthusiasm feels slightly out of place, that strong opinions require careful framing, that standing out demands justification. The culture does not suppress expression outright, but it encourages emotional efficiency. Say only what is necessary. Feel only what fits the moment. Some adapt completely, finding relief in the reduced emotional volatility. Others experience a gradual sense of detachment, not from people, but from themselves. The version of identity shaped by openness, urgency, and expressive confidence struggles to fully surface. What remains is a quieter self, functional and polite, yet subtly constrained. This is why life in Canada can feel unexpectedly difficult for some Americans. The challenge is not material or structural, but emotional and cultural. It lies in the space between safety and stimulation, between calm and vitality. Canada offers a life that works smoothly, but not everyone is wired to thrive in smoothness alone. In the end, the cultural divide is less about right or wrong and more about rhythm. Some lives flourish in quiet balance. Others need contrast, friction, and visible momentum to feel alive. When those needs go unmet, even the most comfortable environment can begin to feel uninhabitable, not because it fails, but because it asks for a different emotional language than some are prepared to speak.